A prominent Uyghur comedian has gone missing in China's Xinjiang province. Adil Mijit hasn't been seen for 2 months, and his family fear that he's been sent to a Chinese re-education camp. Last August, a UN committee alleged that around 1 million Muslim Uyghurs and some other minorities are being detained in camps in the province. China insists that people in Xinjiang receive what it calls vocational training to combat the growth of extremism. Xinjiang is home to 12 million Muslims. Well, let's speak to Arsalan Hidayat, Adil Mijit's son-in-law, who currently lives in Turkey. Welcome to you. Thanks very much for joining us here on BBC World News. Tell us more about your father-in-law, what it is that he does and why you think that he might be considered a threat by the Chinese authorities.
Thank you very much for having me and giving me the opportunity to tell my father-in-law's story. As you mentioned, my father-in-law is he's a comedian within the Uyghur region. He makes his people laugh. He works at the Xinjiang theatre company. He's been loyally working for the Chinese communist government for the past 30, 35 years. The only thing that we can think of that, I guess you mentioned a threat, would be his Uyghur Muslim identity. That's the only thing.
And you haven't heard from him for some time now. Was this something that he was concerned about? Did he consider himself that he might be possibly something could happen to him?
Yes. Back in mid-2017, he came to Istanbul and stayed with us for about 2 weeks. And during that time, he mentioned that he too might be taken in these internment camps. And we told him to stay and not to go back. But he said, you know, I've got to be there for my Uyghur people. I've got to cheer them up, because the people around him, his colleagues, other scholars, other artists, other culture figureheads were going in, were also disappearing. He also expected it, but instead of living in the free world, he said no matter what, he wanted to be with his people.
China, of course, insists that these camps are vocational training camps and they're there to, what they say is combat the threat of extremism. Did you hear any more about these camps? Did your father-in-law say anything about what he knew about them, what he was perhaps concerned about?
What's really comical here is tomorrow is actually my father-in-law's birthday. He's turning 55 years old. Again, he's one of the top actors in China. Why does he need re-education for? For what? He's good at his job. He's well known to the people, as you've seen. But no, he doesn't know. We've heard of things like torture, indoctrinating people with Chinese propaganda, saying and getting into their minds, saying, "Hail China, hail Xi Jinping." Xi Jinping now sees himself like a god/demigod, and they're pretty much worshipping him to an extent in the camps. This is what we've heard from certain people that have left, that were lucky to leave based on their, if they have dual citizenship with another country.
So you haven't heard from your father-in-law for 2 months, as you say, it's his birthday tomorrow.
Yes.
Have you been able to contact the Chinese authorities at all? Have you been able to reach out to people who are there to see whether they've had any contact with him?
So we've contacted his workplace, and they haven't given us any answers. They've just told us to contact people higher up. We've tried the Chinese consulate here in Istanbul. They haven't given us any answers. And we've heard of people leaving these concentration camps dead. And if they are lucky, their bodies are given back to their families to be given a funeral. And the unlucky ones, the bodies are either cremated for the evidence to be put away.
Is that your fear now? Do you fear that he may be dead?
Well, he does have a heart condition. In early mid-October, he actually left hospital. He was in hospital for 70 days. He had a double bypass heart surgery. And upon his release, he was actually, later we heard that he was suspended from work. He never told us this. We only found out about his suspension about 40-odd days ago. I forget the date now, on December 13, we actually took the news to Radio Free Asia in Washington. And this is when this whole media campaign kind of started. Yes.
Okay, Arsalan Hidayat, thank you very much for telling us more about your father-in-law, Adil Mijit, and of course I'm sure you'll contact us if you do hear anything about his whereabouts. Thank you.
Thank you again. Bye.